For 20 years. I'm a retired minister of the United Church of Canada, and I'm very happy to be here tonight as moderator, MC, whatever. We are just absolutely thrilled to have such a who's who of progressive, passionate, articulate advocates for a positive Canada. So I welcome you to this evening with the lineup of speakers we have is just amazing. And for those of you who are not from Calgary, I welcome you to Calgary, which I would like to say is a progressive city in the, well, it is, in the heartland of conservative supporters. I like to say that many people around Canada envious our mayor, in contrast to a few other places. I also want to welcome our marvelous lineup of speakers who come from throughout this land and make enormous contributions where they are, not only in their own communities, but throughout Canada, and for bringing a positive voice in all of the work they do, every one of them, a positive voice for a progressive and just and humane country. I also want to thank Common Causes for organizing this event, along with other organizations such as Public Interest Alberta and the Council of Canadians. Common Causes is pretty new. It's an assembly of social movements dedicated to defending democracy. It's not a bad idea in this day and age. The environment and human rights. And in keeping with the values of a significant majority of Canadians, Quebecers, and Indigenous peoples, they provide alternatives to the current Conservative government's agenda. And God knows that's what we need right now. I also want to thank the Calgary Public Library. They have a history of supporting events like this, and so we thank them as a public institution supported by taxes. Now, I've been asked to remind people to turn off your cell phones or anything else that makes a lot of noise. The only people who can make noise right now are you, the audience, and our speakers. The rules of this are fairly simple. Each speaker has 12 minutes, and isn't that amazing? Because the people we have are used to talking much longer than that, and they've got so much to say, but they've agreed to respect their time out of respect for the other speakers, particularly who follow them. And just so you know, they will have 5-minute, 2-minute, and 1-minute warnings from the front here. And then a big hook is going to appear if they don't follow that. This is sort of like the Walrus, one by one. I'll not be reading that. I might say one line from it, but you can read that, and I think you know who many of them are anyway. One of the things I would say is that under Mr. Harper, the Canada we love is being dismantled, just as he promised it would be. He leads the most corrosive and mean-spirited government in Canadian history, in my humble opinion. Our federal government believes in punishment, ideology, enemies at home and abroad, and understands both politics and governing as warfare. Taxes are bad, climate change is questionable, First Nations are a nuisance, poverty is caused by the poor, public servants are freeloaders, scientists are not realistic, citizens are either consumers or commodities. The list of Mr. Harper's attacks on valued Canadian institutions, legislation, and programs is long and not to be forgotten. Now, I think that one of the things that we're going to hear tonight is a positive alternative to what I just mentioned about our current government. So I invite you to sit back, to relax, to yell and cheer when each one is finished, and be inspired by a fabulous group of Canadians with a better, just, respectful, and loving vision of our country. But before we get into each one of our speakers, I want to welcome Elder Gus Manybears from the Blood Tribe to welcome us to this land. Gus.
Thank you very much. I guess there goes my speech. I spent a week trying to write and it's nice to sleep, and I guess I have 3 minutes to say something. But anyways, thank you very much for being asked to come up here and speak to and say a prayer for you guys and the people that came to Calgary. Thank you, and to come into our beautiful city in Canada, the best city in the world. Beside Toronto. I'm watching them with people from Toronto. They just say, don't forget to mention us. Okay, one thing is I was told was it's an honor. My grandmother taught me it's an honor to be asked to say a prayer. And today I will say a prayer for everyone and everything that will work out, that we're working hard for. What you guys are working hard for will come true and will come positive. Thank you very much. I'm going to say it in Blackfoot. Hey, napi natu se, hey, spum kina xistikoi. Hey, kimatu kina, matonis paita tui tapisi ge, gochtans kitsmotakpanan sokapi. Hey, xabach kaxani moxsukoi kines tamatso. Hey, the Hakimapi, Pitsan, Hakinay, pues, Nani. That's what Chicane to stand, that's what she, pues, and I say the Stakaspikasan. Hey, smoking not to eat the Pimato, and spite to eat the piece of egg, or times gets one as you can ask a piece, get hooks penance. I Zachumi to be, I spumos, I Zachumi to be a cockatee, a cockatsuki Mursewaki. I can see. Si più tu ci tamasco takayaki tamanya no atsisto atso takimano so atsi ano kan si tabici muxu sikohto ka diktaxi ki tamokso. I just wanted to welcome everybody here. And I think what I get out of this is unity and working together as Canadians, not to start separating each other. There's a prediction that was said. There will be 4 brothers that will meet in one place. And if these 4 brothers cannot get together and cannot work together, cannot understand and try and help each other out, we're in a very bad situation. And today is the first day for that day to start working together, and the government has to understand that too. Each and every one of us here sitting here are very special people, don't ever forget that. And the grandfather hears you. Thank you very much.
As many people in Calgary know, whenever Cheryl and Chantal Chagnon show up at events that we are in for a treat, they give so much of themselves to special events in this, public events in this city. It's really quite marvelous that they are with us tonight, part of Idle No More and part of the music of this land.
Oki, Tanse, welcome. My name is Cheryl Chagnon, Gray Eyes. This is my beautiful daughter, Chantal. We hail from Muskeg Cree Nation, which is on Treaty 6 land, and we honor the fact that we are here on Treaty 7 land, and we honor the people of Treaty 7. We are grateful today to be able to share our song, our hope, our prayer, our healing with each and every one of you this time. Thank you.
We'll begin with the Cree welcome song. Mi wasen
Our country needs our help. Our country needs our prayers. Our country needs healing. Our planet needs healing. We sing the Cree healing song, the crying song, the wailing song, in the hope, in the prayer, in the belief that we can change the world, one person, one heart at a time. We sing this healing song for each and every one of us gathered here, for those who are not with us right now, for all of those on this planet who are hurting. We sing this healing song for our Mother Earth. May she be healed.
We're very honored you're here. Thank you very much. Our first speaker tonight is Maude Barlow, who I don't think any of you have ever heard of Maude, probably. She's the national chairperson of the Council of Canadians and one of our great leaders across this land. Maude.
Wow. Thank you very, very much for an absolutely wonderful evening. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for that beautiful song. That was just the songs that just went straight into my heart. Thank you so much. And thank you for the welcome from our elder. Stephen Harper came to power with a mandate. I don't know who sent him. The Calgary School, maybe his God, I'm not sure. But he came with a mandate to change Canada permanently and profoundly. He has imposed on Canada an extreme right-wing agenda that is so deep and has such long roots that I fear it's going to last for years and maybe decades unless we have the courage and the political will to reverse some of what has happened. He's given corporations unprecedented tax windfalls. He plans to dramatically reduce the federal presence, funding, and policy involvement in our healthcare system, which will lead to the privatization of health services, which he has supported from the day he worked for the National Citizens Coalition. He attacks workers and unions in an attempt to break their right to collective bargaining. He's aggressively promoting the privatization of essential services such as water. If a municipality funding for water, now, the only way they can get federal funding is if they move to a public-private partnership. He has attacked the collective power of farmers, shutting down the wheat board and putting the supply management system at jeopardy with these trade agreements. He has abandoned the Kyoto Accord, and he gives more money every year in subsidies to big oil than his government gives to Environment Canada. He has gutted freshwater laws, the Fisheries Act, the Navigable Waters Protection Act, the Environmental Assessment Act. He has left the vast majority of our lakes and rivers absolutely unprotected in any way. And he has betrayed First Nations by refusing to recognize their right to free, prior, and informed consent when this exploitation takes place in their territories. He has created a two-tier system of refugees and refugee protection, making the process vulnerable to right-wing swings in political action. I mean, our immigration and refugee system is right now. He has opposed all progressive human rights legislation at the UN, including the global moratorium on executions, the human right to water, which the Harper government led the fight against, and he has shamefully softened Canada's traditional opposition to torture. He has stated clearly that trade openly trumps human rights in our foreign policy, and he has opened the door for more corporate control over our policies. And it's very important that we understand that these trade agreements, the one with NAFTA, the one coming up with Europe, the one potential with the investment agreement with China and others, give more and more corporations the right to say that if any future government in this country tries to undo what I've just talked about, and they can prove that it's going to cost them money, and they can sure do that for environmental changes, they can sue the government of Canada for millions and potentially billions of dollars of lost profit. So we need to understand how he's using the trade agreements as a kind of constitutional framework to lock in this deregulation. The Harper government has slashed foreign aid and tied it to the bottom line interests of Canada's mining companies. Canada's mining companies, to our shame, have the worst reputation in the world in terms of human rights and environmental violations. He has abandoned peacekeeping and heavily subsidizes the defense industry. And the Harper government is shutting down dissent from anyone who dares to question this agenda. He prorogues Parliament at his whim. He used fraudulent election tactics to direct non-conservative voters to phony voting booths. We have the Federal Court of Canada laying that right straight at the feet. There has been no action taken to assure us that that won't happen again. He muzzles scientists and public sector workers. He withholds vital information from the public and from journalists. He calls environmentalists enemies of Canada. And I'll just give you a partial list of the groups he has shut down or defunded. The National Council of Welfare, the Challenges Program, the Canadian Conference of the Arts, the Complaints Commission, Development and Peace, Kairos, Rights and Democracy, Alternative, Match International, the Canadian Council for International Cooperation, Climate Action Network, the Canadian Environmental Network, the Experimental Lakes Area, and the Canadian Foundation for Climate and Atmosphere and Science, and I started to write out all of the environmental or independent science institutes and research centers that he's closed down, and I would have run out of time. I would have taken the whole evening. The document's that thick. This is what Stephen Harper does to dissent in this country, or even possible dissent, or even a possible different view. Well, I have news for Stephen Harper tonight. I have news for you, Mr. Harper. You can slash all you want, but the voices of dissent are not going to be silenced, and they are growing stronger than they have ever been in this country. You represent what Jeffrey Sachs calls by the 1%, for the 1%, and of the 1%. That 1% does not represent the values or beliefs of the majority of Canadians, and you are doing this in the name of a very small group of people, and getting smaller by the day with even the moral compass that was assumed you had has moved. We have a fundamentally different vision. We challenge corporate rule, and we believe that the economy exists to serve communities and people, not the other way around. And this is a fundamentally different way of looking at the world. We know it is possible to commit to sustainable energy and a sustainable alternative energy future. Many countries in the world are doing this. Germany has promised to go, at least half of Germany has promised to go totally fossil fuel free within the next 10 to 20 years. But it takes commitment. And when you're building pipelines and expanding the tar sands and setting up fracking operations across the country, you're allowing the energy and the oil industry to dictate policy. And that means that we don't put any money, any energy, or any political will into an alternative. We in this room know that we can do this. We know we have to do this if the planet is to survive. We know that we can create trade agreements that protect human rights, worker rights, social security, and the environment. And in fact, there is a trade agreement, a trade bloc in South America now among a number of countries who, yes, trade with each other and, yes, want to be more prosperous and take their people out of poverty, but they talk about the concept of living well, not living better. So it's not a competitive system, and it's not a system that gives power over to corporations. There are models around the world that we can use, and we know that we will present those kind of trade options to the ones that are driven by corporations currently. We support family farms and local sustainable food production controlled by farmers themselves for the community, not for the bottom line profit of transnational agribusiness. We will fight you tooth and nail if you try to dismantle Medicare, and I want to say this as strongly as I can. Stephen Harper will be gone one day, and he will go to his great reward being on the boards of all his corporate friends, that he is not taking our public health care system with him. Let us vow that. We will not let you destroy our precious water heritage in a planet running out of clean water. We have a very special responsibility in this country to take special care of the gift that we have been given. There are water refugees building around the world, and we need to understand that this water is our responsibility. It's not our right, it's our responsibility to care for. We will protect Canada's water as a public trust, a common heritage, and a human right. And I just want to say finally that partly because of your horrible, undemocratic policies, Stephen Harper, we are building an unbelievable alliance in this country of First Nations and non-First Nations people that I have never seen in all of my years. We are... We know that First Nations governance and treaties are really all that stand between us and the Harper vision, because they have stripped the rules and tools that we had in place to protect our resources and our public services. So it's extraordinarily important that we work together. We have to work across the country with labor, environmentalists, farmers, frontline healthcare workers, social justice groups and activists, communities of color, faith-based organizations and groups, and the like, as we have never done before. The time has come for us to come together across these sectors and say, it may not be my first issue, but if it's your issue and it matters to you, it matters to me, and I will be there, sister and brother, on the line when you need me. So I welcome you to a wonderful evening, and I just want to say on all of our behalf to Stephen Harper and the people meeting at the Conservative Party of Canada tonight, Canada does not belong to you. Your narrow ideology is not our narrow ideology. We have a very different vision of the future. We are the stewards of this land, and you answer to us, and we say no to your vision. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a great beginning, Maude. Thank you very much for getting us off to a terrific start. I don't know how many issues you named, but you certainly named one or two. And following up with you, it's Jim Stanford, who is with the UNIFOR Union. You may see him on the CBC Bottom Line periodically as he tries to bring some common sense into our economics. So common sense, Jim, let's go.
All right, Bill, how wonderful to be back in my hometown, Calgary, Alberta. Everyone's always surprised to hear that a left-wing pinko economist came from Calgary, Alberta. But not everyone in Calgary is conservative. In fact, I find fewer and fewer conservatives in Calgary all the time. But now I temporarily live in Toronto, where everyone's excited this week. Because we have a corrupt, mean-spirited right-wing politician crashing and burning before our eyes. So let's just hope that becomes a trend, shall we? All righty. Now, one of the great things about having kids, there's lots of great things. One of the great things is they keep you in touch with popular culture, okay? Music, clothes, communications. Okay, including this thing where they send each other secret codes, okay, on their phones, like this good Made in Canada phone you'll notice that I've got up there, okay, like this one, IDTS. Anybody know what that means? I don't think so. That's right. It took me a while to get that right. Okay, I don't think so. So let's try it with me together here. IDTS. I don't think so. Very good, thank you. Yes, I don't think so. Every now and then I notice there's an F that gets thrown into these codes. Maybe someone can help me understand that as a parent afterwards. So, right now, over at the convention center, Prime Minister Harper's giving a big speech. His goal, change the channel, okay? He wants to stop talking about the Senate. He wants to start talking again about the economy, because what is supposed to be the strongest aspect of the Conservative brand is not integrity anymore, in case you haven't noticed. It's supposed to be that they're good economic managers, okay? And we are going to hear this ad nauseum for the next 2 years. Get yourselves ready. So let's use the secret IM instant messaging code to evaluate these claims. Are they indeed good economic managers? Claim number one, Canada's economy is a job-creating machine. Right? Have we heard this? I don't think so. All right, you guys are with the program here. And here's the evidence. Okay, yes, we do create some jobs. We do create some jobs, but not nearly enough jobs for the people who are in Canada who need jobs and who can work and whose work will contribute to our prosperity in the future. When Stephen Harper took office at the end of 2005, 62.6% of working-age Canadians had a job. That has fallen by almost a full percentage point, okay? 250,000 missing jobs. No matter how they try to spend the money, our economy is not creating enough jobs for the needs of Canadians and the potential of Canadians. So, in fact, the employment rate has been falling over the last 2 years. So not only has it fallen, it is still continuing to fall. And this is the economic reality. So on this claim that Canada's economy is a job-creating machine, I don't think so. All right. Next claim. Canada's economy survived the recession better than anyone else, right? I'm surprised they don't have a repetitive strain injury up in Ottawa from patting themselves on the back nonstop for the last 5 years. The reality is we have not kept up with our population in terms of creating new jobs, and we have actually fallen behind most of the rest of the industrialized world in this regard. If we look at the true statistic that matters, which is the employment rate, the percentage of working age people who have a job, how did it change over that recessionary period? Did we in fact survive better than anyone else? Are we number one? Like the hockey team at the Vancouver Olympics? We're kind of more like the men's soccer team, ranked 105th in the world. Last ranking. This is the whole list. I know this is nauseating detail. Canada ranked 20th out of the 34 countries in the OECD, judged by the change in the employment rate over the recession. So there's no justification for the back-patting that goes on in Ottawa. And regarding this claim, I don't think so. Okay, another claim. Free trade is helping Canada's exports. And if you oppose free trade, you're against exports and you're an economic imbecile. Okay, I can't tell you how often that claim has been leveled at me. Here's the evidence on Stephen Harper's performance on exports. When he took office, 38% of our GDP was exported. Today, less than 30%, and the number is still falling. I care about exports. We do have to have exports to pay for our imports and to create jobs, but signing free trade agreements is hurting our exports, not helping them. So on this claim, I don't think so. All righty. I could be a preacher, Bill. I think I'm doing all right here. You know? You and me.
Bring you off the stage pretty quickly.
The Conservatives are strengthening our role in the world economy. Here's the evidence. When Harper took power, we had a $50 billion balance of payments surplus. Now we have a $63 billion balance of payments deficit. The more free trade agreements we sign, the higher our dollar goes. The more oil we export, the worse our trade performance becomes. And in fact, the current account balance is getting worse all the time. On this claim, I don't think so. Another claim about businesses. Their tax cuts are going to stimulate investment that we need for our future prosperity. Look how they've cut the corporate income tax rate by almost 30% since they came into power. This was going to unleash a big boom in business capital spending. For those of you who are hard of seeing, I know it's hard to see the increase in capital spending there. Okay, I'll bring it to you. There it is. $12 billion a year is what those tax cuts are costing us. If there was a scandal that should bring down this government, it should be the waste of $12 billion a year doing absolutely nothing. Think about Nigel Wright's $90,000 check. You would have to write 135,000 $90,000 checks. Do the math on your smartphone right now. 135,000 of those checks a year to pay that $12 billion down the drain. And the investment rate is still falling. Another indication, the only thing that's gone up, corporate cash since the Harper government was elected. If you cut taxes, they're making profits, but they're not spending it. What happens? They're sitting on it. Now $600 billion in corporate cash uninvested. So the claim that they've stimulated investment, I don't think so. Similarly, with the claim that it will unleash free enterprise spirit that will innovate new products and services and lead us to the promised land, or perhaps we could call it the economic G-spot, which the free market will deliver. Here is business spending on innovation since Harper took office, from 1.1% down to 0.8%, the lowest level since Statistics Canada started gathering this data, and it's still falling. Is Conservative policy supporting innovation? I don't think so. Same goes for this whole issue of productivity. There's nothing more productive than the free market, as you know. So what's happened to our productivity growth under Stephen Harper? The decade before the Conservatives came in, not great, but it's there, 1.75% a year. Since Stephen Harper was elected, the lowest average annual productivity growth of any Prime Minister in Canada's post-war history, and it's still falling. So on this claim, I don't think so. So let's have a little economics lesson for the Conservatives. The real value of economic activity comes as follows, with this simple formula. We start with the gifts of nature, the resources, the space, the air, the water that we're blessed to have, and then we add value to it through our labor, through our brains and our brawn and our ingenuity. That is the source of value, not tax cuts, not free trade agreements, not deregulation. So if you want more economic value, you have to do more work and you have to value that work because that is the source of prosperity. But Conservatives are doing the opposite. They're ensuring that we have less work to do in Canada, and they're devaluing work and workers through their systematic attacks on workers, their systematic attack on wages, and now their systematic attack on unions. Look at the Conservative policy book that they're reading this weekend. 9 bills attacking unions, 2 more attacking pensions, 1 attacking employment insurance. Try and find a bill in that proposal that's anything about job and lifting up standards and valuing what you do, and you're going to be disappointed. So it's no surprise that Canada's economy has deteriorated under their oversight. By every fundamental economic measure, employment, productivity, investment, innovation, exports, global engagement, and ultimately mass prosperity, by every fundamental measure of economic performance, Canada has gone backwards since the Conservatives were elected, not forward. These are the real facts, not the spin. All the data is from Statistics Canada, and we'll put it all online when we're finished. Not only have things been bad, but they are actually getting worse. All of those indicators have deteriorated in the last 2 years, suggesting continued decline. So on the overall claim, Conservatives are good economic managers. I don't know where that F came from. But there we go. Thank you very much.
So you want to become a preacher? I think you are a preacher. Well, we're very honored tonight also to have with us Castell Library, who is a Beaver Lake Cree Nation activist. We've seen her at many different rallies and events in Alberta, as she works tirelessly for environmental integrity and for the health of Mother Earth. So welcome to Castell.
Whew. I didn't realize I was up next. I said, oh wait, I didn't put any lipstick on. Danse and hello. First off, I want to acknowledge the Treaty 7 territory we stand on and the territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy. Is this the live stream camera? Also, I want to give a shout out to my beautiful babies and my family watching on live stream. Kasagi, Thin, I love you. When we go about things in a good way, with good intentions, our Creator will never leave us vulnerable. Things don't happen by chance. Everything happens for a reason. And because we embark on this challenge with love and light in our hearts, we are exactly where we are meant to be. We are warriors, Mother Earth's soldiers. Lakota chief and holy man Sitting Bull said this: "For us, warriors are not what you think of as warriors. The warrior is not someone who fights, because no one has the right to take another's life. The warrior for us is one who sacrifices himself for the good of others. His task is to take care of the elderly, the defenseless, those who cannot provide for themselves, and above all, the children, the future of humanity." And that came from The Militarization of Indian Country by Winona LaDuke. Mother Earth's soldiers are warriors because we believe in a better world, a better human existence, a better future for the generations to come, and we believe in the life-giving abilities of our one true mother. Prime Minister Stephen Harper made a promise to First leaders, a promise whilst keeping lines of communication open, and that would be based on mutual respect, friendship, and support. Those are his words. I think every person in this room, First Nations or not, I think they have a little of that. The importance of raising the platform on the rights of Indigenous peoples is that we currently have the constitutional power to stop these extreme extractive industries from further raping and pillaging our lands. The First Nations people of Canada collectively have the constitutional power to stop these developments. And if you're a Canadian citizen, you too are treaty holders of this land. These treaties 1 to 11 that were signed across Canada involve you. And it's also your responsibility to stand up and say, enough is enough, no more. We will no longer stand here and be the vessels of disaster. The federal and provincial governments collaboratively have dismantled meaningful review and regulation of tar sands operations, which contribute to the cumulative impacts of this industry as a whole. Currently, tar sands, as an extreme energy, is the largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada, and from this greed, we have experienced the Conservative government passing Bill C-38, which gutted our environmental laws. Bill C-45, a First Nations land grab, and the complete ignorance that 80% of the world's fresh water is in Canada. There is only 1% of fresh water in the world. Who gave this government the right to destroy our fresh water system, and with barely a nod to the question of what are we going to drink when the disaster strikes? Because it will. And when it does, it's not going to know race, color, or creed. An industry is using 1.7 billion barrels of that fresh water per day. There will come an end. Now let's back up to December 2012. 2.5 million protected lakes and rivers. And one day after the passing of Bill C-45, we were left with 97 protected lakes and 62 protected rivers, which then was followed by the Alberta Provincial Bill S-8, which was the privatization of our water. Taking the milk of our mother and turning it into a commodity. A government's attempt at trying to sell what was never theirs in the first place. Who can afford this? The poor First Nations people, born into third world living conditions in a first world country? The poor farmer who relies on his crops to feed his family? The 99%? No. Industry. Industry is who can afford it, and this government made sure of that. Then this government pulled out of the Kyoto Protocol and signed FIPA. Yet more behind-the-scenes, closed-door decisions, deliberately ignoring the democratic process of involving the citizen members of this nation we call Canada. So here we sit, a government refusing to accept responsibility and hiding from accountability and transparency. This is no longer an Indian problem. If you breathe air and you drink water, this is about you. We are economic hostages in our own country. When do we stand up and break free from this lockup? Why do we sit in fear? Fearmongers. They are everywhere. One of them's giving a speech right now, over there. Selling their wares. But I have a message for them. Pedal away. Sell your fear. Because you're the people I'm going to ask. Can you drink your oil? Can you eat your money? We are involved in a direct exploitation of our natural resources from one end of this country to another, all over what we call Turtle Island and on a global level, i.e. the Northern Gateway and Kinder Morgan pipelines in BC, the tar sands, natural gas, and coal extraction in Alberta, the uranium, potash, and crude oil extraction in Saskatchewan, the destruction of treaty lands in Manitoba for hydraulic power generation, the mining of diamonds in Attawapiskat and Enbridge's Line 9 in Aamjiwnaang, Ontario, also the mining of diamonds in the Northwest Territories, and the fracking of natural gas in Elsipogtog. These are but a very few selection of examples of the exploitation, and from this, as the First Nations people of this country, we also must face environmental racism. A government looking beyond the front lines, communities impacted by these decisions. And I'm here to remind you, Prime Minister Harper, that we're human too. We exist, we are here, and we are not anywhere. Industry talks so highly of its reclamation sites, the sites that house poisoned wildlife, i.e. the buffalo that were placed on a reclamation site near a tailings pond. Industry came along and with their lying words said, here, look what we're doing. How great we are, see? See these beautiful buffalo roaming free in their natural habitat? We're so awesome that we're even going to sacrifice some of our buffalo and we're going to feed it to the local elders. The elders, who know more than we'll ever know as young people, who figured out this disaster long before we knew it was such. They took the meat, and instead of conceiving, they got it tested. And the result was catastrophic. Chemicals so dangerous and so high in the meat content that it was deemed unfit for human consumption. Thank you. Thanks. Until industry can promise me that they have every single vegetation that was natural to that area and in its purest form, an ecosystem returned as if it had never been touched, only then will I stop talking about the lies they fill us with in their idea of reclamation. Reclamation for me is not poisoned life. Reclamation for me is standing here with the 99%, planting the seeds of knowledge, love, and a better world, a world that we agree on collectively. It is time. Time to say we will no longer allow the Canadian government to covet our air and our water. These basic human rights do not belong to them. They cannot be owned because they do not belong to us. They belong to our one true mother, and it's a gift she has bestowed on us as living beings. And when she shakes us from her like fleas, she will go on living, whilst we fall into the ashes of a climate war we lost. We must stand together and say no. No more. Allow this government to play environmental roulette with our lives. Divide and conquer no more. Look around you. Look to your left, to your right, in front of you, behind you. Aye. Thank you, Prime Minister Harper, for bringing together every piece to a perfect solidarity puzzle. Environmental rights and the rights of Mother Earth, the rights of Canadians, the rights of workers, opening a new chapter and changing an historically oppressive past, because the third piece to this puzzle is the First Nations people. Government made history today. I come here with an invitation to you all to stand together. November 16th, communities across Canada will come together to defend our communities against climate change and these exploitive industries. I invite you as a whole, especially you Calgarians, to come together and plan an event. Help form the unbreakable wall of opposition to this government's reckless agenda of fossil fuel exploitation and runaway climate change. Stand with frontline communities and say enough is enough. No rally is too small to participate in this day of action, as you will be standing with thousands of people of these lands. And for more information on that day of action and to register, you can go to defendourclimate.ca. Yet another bill was unveiled by the Harper government via Aboriginal Affairs Minister Bernard Valcourt, the First Nations Education Act, an act that speaks of giving the Indian control of Indian education a facelift. We are left arms in the air. Honest to God, I'm going to be done in like a minute. Sorry, I don't want the hook to come out.
Right behind you.
We are left arms in the air, reading it in the time of utter distrust. It does not address the 2% a year on funding for Aboriginal education since 2006. It talks of seizure of our schools that don't meet Ottawa's standards, federally appointed employees to come into the schools and place their standards upon us, and if we don't meet their standards, which we won't, will result in Ottawa appointing an agent, and further to that, the seizure of our schools. Yet, it does not address the 2,000 to 3,000 per student funding gap between on and off reserve schools, with Valcourt yelling in the background that what the government will not do is throw more money at a known system of education that proves to be failing too many First Nation students across the country. Well, you think? When amongst many of the underfunding issues our schools face, a third lack access to clean drinking water. And somehow the foundation of all our issues return to water, resource extraction, and strong-arming amongst the systemic issues that result in the many missing and murdered Aboriginal women, the residential school system, the cyclical abuses the system's forced upon us, and so many other trials and tribulations we face. What else can we do? How else, after these omnibus bills, do we get in the way of the government's agenda? They think they control the House of Commons. They would like to control the Senate, though. As of late, it seems to be coming back and biting them. With that, they do not completely control the courts. The community I come from, the Beaver Lake Cree Nation, launched a lawsuit against the governments of Canada and Alberta in May of 2008, where at that time we cited over 17,000 treaty rights violations and infringements. But to date, we are at over 19,000 treaty violations in our traditional hunting territory. This has and will continue to be an uphill battle. The government is going to throw everything it can in our way, as it has been. They can outspend us with your tax dollars at that. They can hope to appoint more conservatives to the Supreme Court, but for now, they cannot stop this lawsuit from moving forward. But we cannot do this alone. As Susan Smitten, Executive Director of Raven Trust, says, it's not fair to rely on the poorest people in our nation to stand alone and be the voice of reason in this effort. They have the power of their treaties to protect the planet, and we have the power of a nation to support them. I just encourage people to get behind the line they've figuratively and literally drawn in the tar sand. We are looking for your support on this lawsuit, whether it's organizing a fundraiser in your community or going online and donating to our latest project. Every effort counts. Tonight, we have launched a crowdfunding effort via a collaborative effort with the beautiful folks over at Shit Harper Did. My aunt's gonna be like, why did you say that? So please visit thetarsandstrial.ca, thetarsandstrial.ca. Check out the video that's linked to that. Visit raventrust.ca. Check out our information table in the foyer. And please, please tweet and Facebook the heck out of thetarsandstrial.ca. Also, Idle No More. Their 1-year anniversary is coming up November 10th. You know, take time to reflect on this 1 year. You know, do something, plan something, be a part of it. This is your movement too. This is an everybody's movement. Natatamanan, I'm thankful and grateful.
Thank you very much, Crystal, for those inspiring words to move us all into action wherever we are in whatever possible way we can join together. Our next speaker is Andrew Nikiforuk, who is a well-known Calgary author. His latest book is energy of slaves, and I think he probably will say something about that, but he's one of the most outspoken critics of the tar sands and related matters, so welcome to this platform, which you've been on many times.
Whenever I am asked by Americans or Europeans, and they ask me quite often, they say, what has happened to Canada today? And they say, what happened to the country that was that civil and generous nation that once led peace missions, that gentle place that once celebrated freshwater science, that was a leader in climate change research, that nation that once boldly participated, and generously so, in international bodies? What happened to that Canada that was a moral force in the world? And Americans and Europeans are asking that question. That is a question every Canadian should be asking in themselves too. So here is my answer, and it is not a comfortable answer. A greedy mining republic with the reputation of a Dr. Jekyll has now banked its economic future on dirty oil. In the process, a gentle Canada has become a bullying Mr. Hyde. As the Oxford political scientist Paul Collier puts it, politics can affect the exploitation of natural assets, and natural assets can affect politics. And Canada is a sordid example. The evidence is overwhelming, as Maude and others tonight have presented. Over the last 2 years, the Conservative government of Stephen Harper, the son of an imperial oil accountant, has forcefully assaulted the nation's democratic institutions, attacked environmental organizations, and threatened Canada's 1 million Aboriginal people. At the same time, Canada's Hyde-like government has muzzled climate change scientists, maliciously trashed most of the country's fundamental environmental legislation. In short, Stephen Harper, a studied imitation of Margaret Thatcher, has used Canada's oil revenues to incrementally construct a right-wing petro-state with a penchant for what? For defense spending, electoral fraud, Senate corruption, prison building. Is that the legacy you want for your children? Now, Margaret Thatcher used oil revenue from the North Sea for exactly the same program. She bashed unions. She fought a war with Argentina, and she imposed her own brand of libertarian materialism on the country. She saved not a penny of oil money and left England a divided country. So what is a petrostate? It is a jurisdiction that runs on oil revenue and becomes a plantation economy for hydrocarbons. Oil is the world's most lucrative and volatile commodity, and that is why it is called black gold. Once a state gets hooked on revenues from oil, it does all kinds of bad things. First and foremost, it lowers taxes. It wants you to feel warm and fuzzy about all this oil production. But by lowering taxes, it decouples the vital link between taxation and representation. If you are not being taxed, you will not be represented. There is no representation without taxation. And what is the #1 platform of the Harper government? I will lower your taxes. He should finish the sentence. I will lower your taxes and I will lower your representation. In the process, a little tax citizenry becomes fat and lazy, while governments increasingly become more and more unaccountable as they steadily and inexorably represent oil interests. Now, petrodollars not only fund this kind of corruption of the state, but invite the state to abandon statecraft and to centralize and abuse power. So political scientist after political scientist says, from Paul Collier to Michael Ross to Terry Lynn Carl, have noted that oil revenue tends over time to strengthen authoritarian regimes and to weaken democratic ones. It enables tyrants and political parties to remain in power way beyond their normal shelf lives. Look at Alberta, one party, 42 friggin' years, all right? Margaret Thatcher ruled England for 12 years. She was the longest sitting prime minister in the last century. The money also invites electoral fraud. The rationale is simple. Winning power provides access to more petrodollars, the key to remaining in power. So, oil money has a corrosive and abrasive influence on government. It leaves a legacy of over-centralized political power. Just look at everything you're hearing every day about what Stephen Harper is doing in Ottawa. Strong networks of complicity between public and private sector acts, highly uneven mineral-based development subsidized by oil rents, and the replacement of domestic tax revenues and other sources of earned income by petrodollars. Now, we all know Alberta is a bona fide petro state, although you daren't mention the name. It gets 30% of its income from hydrocarbons. It has lowered taxes, and due to the volatility of petro revenue, now has run deficits for 5 years in a row. Imagine that, the wealthiest jurisdiction in Canada. Most Albertans feel so poorly represented that barely 40% of us go out to vote. For 42 years, one party has ruled the province. This party, which primarily represents oil developers, throws money at all of our problems and practices no statecraft. It has saved virtually nothing for the future, just like Margaret Thatcher. Things have become so dysfunctional in Alberta that an energy lobbyist now runs the Alberta Energy Regulator. That's Gerald Proddy, all right? He was the founder of the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. He now runs the province's energy. Now, the media is so compromised in this province that it sees no conflict of interest. Premier Redford argues that it's okay to flaunt the law and ban environmental groups from public hearings even after a judge has deemed such a bias contrary to every principle of natural justice. Alberta's petrostate has even removed the word public interest from legislation governing energy developments because, as one lawyer put it to me, they had no idea what it means. Now take that debased culture and add some religious extremism to the mix. The tradition goes back 50 years in this province. Joseph Howard Pugh, the head of Sun Oil, who pioneered the oil sands. He was an American oil sheik, and at one time the 8th wealthiest man in the United States. He was an evangelical Presbyterian. I'm a Christian. I have nothing against evangelicals, by the way, but except for these extreme guys. So, now Pugh funded right-wing groups such as the John Birch Society, and just as the big rich millionaires in East Texas, oil fields funded right-wing evangelical groups in the United States in the 1950s, and also Joe McCarthy, Pugh helped to fund Ernest Manning's Back to the Bible Hour. Now, Harper is an evangelical Christian who refuses to talk about his beliefs. He has strong ties to the oil industry. His father, as I mentioned, worked for Imperial Oil, which is today ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil funded the campaign against climate change research and is now the largest funder of the Republican Party in the United States. After Exxon Valdez, ExxonMobil resolutely challenged all environmental science, saying that no, it's not possible for oil to deform fish embryos, and on it goes, and courted secrecy. Guided entirely by self-interest, nobody tells ExxonMobil what to do. Does not sound like somebody we know in Ottawa. So Harper has brought Alberta's dysfunctional petroculture and Exxon's self-interest to Ottawa with an extreme religious, with religious extremism. He has imposed this poisonous culture incrementally and insidiously. In 2006, he began by firing Canada's chief science advisor, and we are now the only industrial nation in the world to have an Office of Religious Freedom, but no chief science advisor. He then centralized and consolidated more and more power in the PMO's office. He fired or silenced critics such as Linda Keane of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. He dismissed advice from foreign affairs officials. He's defunded climate change science and agencies such as the National Roundtable on the Economy and the Environment. Why? It considered climate change a moral and economic liability for all of us. Foreign Minister John Baird said such dissent could not be tolerated. So Harper has provided Soviet-like minders for scientists and muzzled them. He has attacked citizens and First Nations opposed to badly designed pipelines. In 2011, members of his political party participated in electoral fraud and the suppression of votes. He pulled Canada out of international treaties, such as the UN Drought Program, the Kyoto Protocol, because that's what petrostates do. They shun precisely those international institutions that have a political character and that require legally binding commitments. The Economist has correctly described the man, the Economist, you know, that an excellent magazine, I might add, has described the man as a bully with a penchant for rule breaking. Couldn't put it better. So why this ruthless agenda? Well, it comes down to the money. They've got a problem. Harper wants Canada to become an energy superpower by tripling oil sands expansion from 2 million to 6 million barrels a day by 2035. And it's all about the money. The Harper government currently stands to collect the largest share of oil rent, or 41% of $126 billion in bitumen revenues by 2020. That's $50 billion to fund a right-wing makeover of Canada. Unfettered tar sands development has already gutted the U.S. marketplace, though. In fact, U.S. demand for oil has declined by 4 million barrels a day due to new fuel standards, the recession, and increased domestic production. Without piping landlocked bitumen to tidewater ports in the Gulf of Mexico or the Pacific coast, Canada can't transform itself into an energy superpower, and Harper cannot consolidate his revolution, because to Harper, every pipeline represents more free and unearned petrodollars with which he can fund his restructuring of the country. And that's what makes us such an ugly petrostate at the moment. Years ago, the political scientist Terry Lynn Carl observed that there's only one way to battle a petrostate, and that's through creative resistance. And that's what... And that is why so many of us are here tonight. That means building the capacity of communities. That means forging alliances with churches, with unions, with civil society, with First Nations, with soccer moms. That means resisting oil-based interests every day of the week. That means demanding transparency and truth in government. That means engaging Canadians from all walks of life and all political parties. It means waking them up to the reality that we are now living in a dangerous political emergency. Canadians must now abandon their ease and comfort. We must awake and defend the very democratic institutions that our veterans fought fascists in Italy and Germany to protect. That's just the beginning of the agenda. We need to behave like owners. These resources belong to us, not to the oil developers. We're out. Last word. We all want progress, and this is from C.S. Lewis, a great Christian philosopher. But if you're on the wrong road, progress means doing an about turn and walking back to the right road. In that case, the man or woman who turns back soonest is the most progressive. And I invite every one of you here tonight to walk that road and to lead Canada back to civility, integrity, and restraint. Thank you.
Andrew mentioned taxes, and I don't know whether you did or not, Jim, but I once preached a sermon in Edmonton on the joy of paying taxes. And as I was preaching that sermon, 4 suits walked out of the church. But it created a debate, and we had 4 sessions after that on Tuesday nights where we had debates between the right and left political spectrums around taxes and economy and social justice and all those things. So taxes are a good thing to talk about in this province. It gets people mad and angry and kind of excited, you know. Well, the last person before our break, we're going to have a short break so you can kind of absorb all this wonderful evening. We're going to have a short break, but before that, Paul Moist is going to speak. He's the National President of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Canada's largest union with over 600,000 members. So it's wonderful to have you here, Paul. Welcome to Calgary.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill.
Sisters and brothers, friends, first of all, welcome to the Calgary Public Library, a CUPE work site. The CUPE members that work here believe profoundly in this public space and in what libraries mean. They earn a living wage, they have benefits at work, they have a pension plan, and part of common causes for CUPE is that each and every Canadian that needs and wants to work should have the right to meaningful work, to fair wages, to benefits, and a pension so all Canadians can retire in dignity. It's a great privilege to share the stage with the tremendous lineup of great Canadians we have tonight here. It's appropriate, and I would argue essential, that we gather here in Calgary in this public space coincident with the Conservative Party of Canada convention. That such a broad cross-section of our community are present here under the Common Causes banner sends a very important message. First, we all care for our country and all of its citizens. And second, we won't be divided. We pledge to work together to build a better Canada and a better world. Unions win the dubious prize down the street in terms of resolutions, as Jim said at the Conservative Party convention. You can imagine the substance of those resolutions and their vision for unions. We just edged out gun and weapon resolutions. One can only hope their resolutions committee does not combine these categories together as much as they may wish to. Almost 8 years into Harper's rule, 2.5 years of majority rule, his stealth approach of division, dogma, and silencing all dissenters is well established. If social policy offends you, simply destroy the evidence that gives rise to such policy by eliminating things like the former mandatory long-form census. If the real negative effects of global warming and climate change impair your economic orthodoxy, eliminate the National Roundtable on the Environment and the Economy. Abandon Kyoto. Defund the Experimental Lakes Research Station at a savings to Canadians of $2.5 million. Stop monitoring emissions from power plants, furnaces, boilers, the oil sands, and suppress scientific evidence. And if any dare surfaces, remove the right of government scientists or meat inspectors to speak to the public they are paid and they want to serve. In 2013, in Canada, what's the most efficient way to do all of the above and more? Bundle up dozens of such moves and house them in a budget implementation bill, hundreds of pages long, and dare anyone to question any piece of that bill. If a union leader questions Bill C-377, so-called transparency to save Canadians from trade unions, he or she is hiding something, and they must be made to bend to the Harper vision of silencing all dissenters and removing their ability to perform basic union functions. If Chief Teresa Spence challenges federal treatment of First Nations, then throw her under the bus and attack her management of funds in her home community. And I'm proud that Teresa Spence was re-elected in her community with a bigger majority this past August. The people of Atapasca know what she stands for. If you're an opposition member of Parliament and you dare to question a sweeping internet bill, then that MP must stand with pornographers and against the public interest. This is Harperland 2013. This weekend, Mr. Harper will feed more raw meat to his core supporters to shore them up. He will then turn his attention back to his political opponents, and he will devise his plan to scare 7 or 8 additional percentage points of the electorate to get to that magic figure of 39% of those who vote to secure a second majority. That is the only game plan that Mr. Harper is promulgating this weekend. So what must we do? First, in my view, we cannot nuance our way to victory as Canadians who care. The Harper agenda must be challenged openly, such as we're doing tonight, and as many of us will do in the streets of Calgary tomorrow. And each and every one of us in the communities we live in, we must challenge that agenda openly and loudly for the values we believe in. Second, we must anticipate what's coming. Income splitting, a plan to reduce income taxes, especially for upper-income Canadian families, will be an enticing poison pill at the centerpiece of election 2015. We need to respond to that with an honest conversation of what Bill just said. Taxes represent humanity and civility in Canada. We cannot shrink or cut our way to greatness. 3, we don't have the luxury of isolation. We must act together. The common cause's vision of a better Canada must be seen to be so by all Canadians and must present a broad vision. And we must present this to all of our respective communities. As Maude Barlow said, if it's your issue, it's my issue inside of CUPE. 4, we cannot get sucked in to Senate reform as in any sense a defining issue for Canadians. It isn't. And meaningful Senate reform, which requires provincial consent, won't happen. The question around the Senate is, who put Brazeau, Duffy, and Wallen into the Senate? And why were they put there? It seems to me they did exactly what they were recruited for, especially Duffy and Wallen. They were political operatives hired by Canada's principal political operative, Stephen Harper. And they all got caught doing what he wanted them to do. And he should be the one to pay the largest price for their crimes. If their moral compasses as senators were impaired, his is non-existent. And this should be our focus in the near term. And in the long term, we need to drop this issue. It has no legs and no resonance for most Canadians. Lastly, Canadians have core values, and they want a positive vision for their country, a compassionate Canada that cares for children, seniors, and all who are vulnerable. A Canada that the world respects. A Canada that rewards hard work and does not exploit its workforce, nor does it exploit temporary foreign workers. A Canada that accepts its domestic and global obligations. Such a Canada, I know, we'll all agree is worth fighting for. So too will millions of our fellow citizens if we work hard and if we don't back down and if we vow tonight and every day in the days ahead to fight hard to win back our country. Thank you.
Are you having fun so far? Aren't we blessed with some wonderful people in this country who tell it as it is, who tell the truth, and who give us a vision of something that we can aspire to? Well, stick around, because there's more to come from 5 more great Canadians. But right now we're going to let you stand up and wiggle a little bit or whatever you have to do for a break. We'll have a 10-minute break and then we will reconvene. We should have brought a gong. That doesn't work either. I don't know how to whistle. Will you please take your seat? We're going to start momentarily. Well, to start our second half of the evening, we've got somebody who gave Stephen Harper a little bit of a sign. As I told Brigette, as I was watching that happen, I was in Calgary, and she, of course, was in the House of Commons. I said it did my heart good to see that happen, and that she had a lot of courage to do that during the throne speech. I thought it was just an amazing piece of theater and social activism. So please welcome Brigette DePape, who is a social activist and who is an inspiration to many people across this land. Where'd she go?
I must say, on that day in the Parliament, I was so scared. But today, it's not us who's scared. It's Stephen Harper at the Conservative Convention delivering his speech, because he knows that a pillar of Conservative power has been shaken. I have another sign today. It's a $90,000 check. I told my grandpa that I was coming to this counter-conservative convention, and he said, "You know, they're doing a lot of the work for you." Sort of like they've shot themselves in the foot, but it's more like they've been paper cutting themselves with this $90,000 check. So this is an exciting time to be meeting together here. I felt when I was starting out as a young person who was discovering the world, it was really a key turning point for me when I came to a convention that was hosted by the Council of Canadians around the G20 summit. So I want to thank the organizers so much for putting on this event, for bringing us together today. I felt so alone as a page working in Parliament, giving water to senators like Duffy and Wallen. And like so many of us, I felt really afraid about what's happening to our communities, to the climate, to jobs, to the rights of people of color, of migrants, of Indigenous people, of workers. But I knew I had to do something. I wanted to act. But on that day, I just felt so afraid. I was standing there, and then I saw the Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, and the Governor General, and all the Conservative politicians, all of the senators, and I was getting cold feet. But then I thought about the people who are most impacted by Harper's agenda. The people who are being displaced from their homes because of climate change. People who are residential school survivors and their families. People who are being displaced from their homes to make way for Harper's extreme energy agenda. People who are in massive amounts of debt. And then we have Harper, who is cutting taxes for the richest and then ignoring the rest of us. The strength of you, the strength of all those people to wake up another day and to commit to defending their families and their communities and their loved ones. We're in this together. And it is such an important thing to come together like this. Why are we here? We are here because we oppose the conservative agenda. We believe in an alternative vision, one that does not promote an economic system that sees profit as the #1 priority while leaving the environment and people behind. We're here because we believe in another vision. And I urge everyone here to take the time to really gain strength from one another, to look at the people around you, because it can be hard going out there facing the conservatives who are trying to divide us, who are calling our friends extremists, who are defunding critical programs like for residential school survivors, like for women's organizations. Maude listed so many of the important organizations and services that are being cut, like our public health care. But there is so much strength in this room, and there is so much strength in this movement. And we've seen it. We saw it during Idle No More, when people decided to get out of their homes, turn off the TV, and take part in a round dance. We saw it with Chief Spence when she went on hunger strike, the sacrifices she was making for her community and for all of us. We saw it with the doctors who stood up when Harper was cutting services for refugees, and they interrupted Joe Oliver's speech. Because we're taught to obey when we grow up. We're taught to obey. But when an unjust government is going against the will of our people, it is our responsibility to stand up. How are we going to shake those pillars of power that are holding up the conservative government? Jim spoke about that very strong pillar of power that is holding up the conservative government, and that is this false belief that they're good economic managers. How can we shake that pillar of power and reveal the truth? Revealing, for example, that youth unemployment is at an all-time high in many parts of this country. Young people struggling to find work, trying to pay the rent. Dwindling pensions for seniors as well. How can we say that Harper is a good economic manager and good for jobs when that's the reality for young people? But excitingly, there is also a lot of power in young people and in all of us standing behind one another. With the urgent climate crisis and economic crisis that we face, we will need to stand up through acts of nonviolent direct action and civil disobedience. It has worked throughout history, like we have seen with the Haida, who stood up and blockaded and stopped industrial-style logging on their territory. In order to avert catastrophic climate change, 80% of fossil fuels need to stay in the ground. And Harper is taking us in exactly the wrong direction but another way is possible. The pain and the reality of communities who are directly impacted by tar sands expansion is extremely bleak. The poisoning of the water, the health impacts, people fearing to take baths because it's burning their skin. But there is so much power in those communities, and we can stand behind them. Communities like Crystal's is mounting a legal challenge against the Conservative government. There is so much power in that. There have been 170 court cases, legal court cases by Indigenous communities that have stopped harmful developments on their land. And this court case with the Beaver Lake Cree Nation is an incredible opportunity to really stand up and oppose tar sands expansion. And we can transition to a green and just economy for everybody. With the crisis of youth unemployment, there's also an amazing opportunity for youth green jobs. Imagine what a program for youth green jobs would look like in this country. Imagine if it were us who were deciding the policies in place. What would your vision be? What would you propose? What about a committee for a just transition? What would that look like? What would that look like in our communities? Imagine a different reality, rather than this reality of Harper, for example, rejecting the call for missing and murdered Indigenous women, for an inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women. Imagine instead a completely different relationship with Indigenous peoples, one that is based on equality and respect, a nation-to-nation relationship. Everyone deserves love and respect. And that is possible if we decide to take the reins and change fundamentally who is controlling the policies of our country. I work with a group called Shit Harper Did, and we recently put up some TV advertisements here in Calgary showing the wasteful spending of the Conservative government, because we know that just squells the blood of Conservatives, right here in their strongholds this weekend, including on Murdoch Mysteries, which is one of Stephen Harper's favorite shows. I fundamentally believe that we can change the direction of this country, but it's going to take all of us, and we have the skills. It's just a matter of getting organized. Shit Harper Did has been doing activism, creative activism trainings in nonviolent direct action to give young people the skills that they need to take direct action. So I would urge you to visit shd.ca and to donate if you would like to fund young people taking direct action. I'd also like to invite you to a creative activism workshop tomorrow so that we can meet each other and we can get those skills and we can really get organized. This is an amazing convergence of so many different people. There's a workshop that's happening at the Community Wise Resource Center tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. and it's 223 12th Avenue South. Southwest. Thank you. Yeah, welcome to Calgary. Thank you. And for all of those who would like to commit to taking nonviolent direct action and to coming out to the workshop tomorrow, would you please stand and join me? Woo! Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I see the hook coming. I am so excited to be meeting you all and to be organizing with you to change the direction of this country. We can do this.
I'd be there tomorrow afternoon, but I'm going to be in Yellowknife, so I'll have to be excused. But I want to say this because Brigette mentioned the power and the strength of young people. And as an old guy, I want to say that, you know, I wake up pretty discouraged a lot of the time about what's going on in this country. And the thing that gives me encouragement and hope are the many, many young people that I'm privileged to work with, not only in Calgary, but in my travels around Canada on behalf of the United Church and other organizations. We have a tremendous number of talented, bright, engaging young people just like Brigitte and Brigitte. So I think we should give them a little bit of applause and thank them. I want to thank the young folks of this land for giving me encouragement and hope that things will indeed change. Now, with that, I want to introduce Jean Lortie, who is the General Secretary of the Confédération des syndicats nationaux, and he lives in Montreal, so welcome to Calgary.
I'm not going there. I'll start in French saying merci à vous tous de nous accueillir si chaleureusement ici à Calgary ce soir. Thank you all for welcoming us so warmly here in Calgary. It's good to be here. On behalf of our organization, the Confédération of National Trade Unions, it's easier said than Confédération des syndicats nationaux, we represent 300,000 Canadian workers, most in Quebec, but also across Canada, like the Federal Correctional Officers, Radio-Canada, CBC in Quebec and Atlantic Canada. And first of all, I would say thank you for Common Causes and the Council for Canadians to make that event tonight. We need to coalesce. We need from coast to fight back. Why? Never in the recent history of the Canadian labor movement we've seen such a brutal, well-coordinated, and massive attack on ordinary people. Who are they? The 4.3 million Canadian workers who are unionized. Shame on them? No. Proud to be unionized. A few meters from here, at this convention, there are about 15 resolutions that are being debated. 9 of them are about union bashing, on pension funds, on union dues, on the right to organize, and also some of them on those resolutions is about silencing CBC Radio-Canada. This is dangerous. This is dangerous. What kind of Canada are we in when CBC are only public broadcasters being silenced through the money? The conservative hate Rick Mercer. I love it. I want to tell you, like, our Charter of Rights and Freedom, our fundamental rights in Canada allows 3 things. The right to organize, to improve your lot, to get out of misery. Harper is challenging that through C-525. The right to negotiate in a fair environment where you can have a leverage effect, C-377, attacking unions. The right to strike, the right to have leverage effect on your employers, the government or a private sector employer, C-4. 3 bills, table down. Luckily, the Senate helped us. Love the Senate. Last summer, thanks to real red Tories, there are still some of them, decent people in the Senate House, say to Harper, this is not working. C-377 won't work for Canadians. This is infringing on fundamental rights. And it does. Ever since 1948, with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we have the right, and we must not be ashamed of it, to organize ourselves. It's about creating a middle class. All these 3 legislation pieces that have been tabled down recently in the Parliament were through omnibus bill, the mammoth bills. This is the way they govern. It is dangerous for our society. Harper's government at this convention, the last one before the next federal election, has decided that the enemy in Canada is the labor movement. Why? We got the members, 4.3 million of them, their families. Probably half of Canadian population is related to union members. We always forget about that. And it's all across all scope of economic lives, from one seat to the other to the other. People are unionized in Canada. 40% in Quebec, 30% in Canada. Look at what the picture in the United States. They succeeded. They succeeded bashing unions. Look at the working condition of people, ordinary people. They struggle even with the Obamacare. They struggle every day with wages, pensions, insurance. Do we want that in Canada? No. This is what Harper's promising us. By destroying the labor movement, he's preparing his election in 2 years, will be silenced. And there will be no one to record our complaints. CBC Radio-Canada will be silenced. It will be Sun Media. It will be Québécois. It will be the Jessica belonging Power Corporation. These will be the medias talking to us how good we are in Harperland. We have to fight back. And how can we fight back? First of all, we have to fight back strategies of divisive. Harper wants to divide us. Quebec against Canada. First Nation against Canadians. Everyone's to be divided like in sections and eaten alive one after the other. In 1946, Matthias Rakosi was the chairman of the Communist Party of Hungary. He decided, I'll try the salami tactics, slicing one slice after the other, until there's none. This is what's happening in Canada right now. Attacking everyone and making sure there's no coordinated voice saying this is not what we want in Canada. I will say all these rights that I mentioned, the right to negotiate, the right to organize, and the right to strike, were confirmed by all courts because we have a Charter of Rights and Freedom. We have a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and we have a lot of international treaties acknowledging that right. This is attacked. It will take decades before courts rule in favor of people. It will be too late. We will be disorganized, we'll have no means to fight back, and we won't be able to recreate our strength. We have to fight back now. Right now in Calgary, we did something very good. I'm very proud to represent the federal correctional officers who decide to fight back. They are good workers, middle-class people working hard, and they are being attacked because they are public servants. They're being hated. And what they did is they organized at the Marriott Hotel, at the Kensington Hall, the meeting hall, they have a showcase. What is a prison cell in Canada with the double bunking? Harper says, I love public security, I love law and order, but he doesn't care about that. He just wants to pile up people in prison to become warehouses. We have to fight back. And they are doing that. Federal correctional officers are telling people that it's dangerous to be in a prison in Canada. And they're showing that cell right in front of Jim Flaherty's party tonight. If you have the opportunity, go there tomorrow. Second floor of the Marriott, where the Conservative delegates passes by. They love it. They love it. But they don't like to see a federal correctional officer standing proud as in uniform, being a public servant, uncorrupted, being proud to work, raising his family, working in the community, paying his taxes, which is not bad. And these people are being viciously attacked by the Conservative right now, like everyone in Canada. How do we answer to that? First of all, August 21st, everyone in Ottawa. The first social forum ever in the Canadian history of organized people. First Nations, Quebec, Canada, we are in Ottawa from August 1st to August 24th. All of us, from the coast to the coast to the coast, to fight back, to give an answer, an alternative to the Conservative government. 2015 is coming fast. We have to be prepared because they'll use such dirty tactics at the election, they might get their majority again. And watch out what will happen afterward. Settling accounts. We must fight back. We don't have that much time ahead of us. And by organizing that first social forum for environmental groups, social groups, feminists, unions, First Nation, all together, linking, networking, will fight isolation. Am I good on the time?
You got 4 minutes.
Oh, gee, that's good. I'm just warming up. I must say that it's the first, and we're so proud to help all the unions in Canada and all together working to make sure that the social forum happens. And in Ottawa, we're in the devil's den, close to where the beast is, with capital B. And we have to be there, because otherwise, remember Matthias Rakosi, the salami theory, will be sliced all by one. I can't remember if Pastor Niemöller or Pastor Bonhoeffer in Germany said they came for the communists. I didn't say anything. They came for the socialists. I wasn't there. They came for the Jews. I wasn't there. They came for the churches, organized church. I wasn't there. When they came for me, there was no one to protest my arrest. It's exactly like that. If we are defeated in each of us, our groups, well, we'll never be able to bring back that rainbow, that coalition, that Canadian, progressive Canadian from all scope of life, public sector, private sector, First Nations, women, young people, migrants, foreign temporary migrants who want to be Canadian but are denied that right. All together we have to fight back, and we will fight back. We will never surrender. Let us fight the right, the freedom of speech. Protect our national broadcaster, CBC Radio-Canada. This is one of the last ones. I must say, let's fight for decency. Let's fight for decency in our public life, for good public services, a democracy that works, people being respected, and living in a country that is good to be living in. Thank you very much.
Well, tonight, I had got to tell you that Chief Teresa Spence is unable to be with us because of a crisis in her community, so she was not able to be here. But Angela Bercier is here to represent her, and Angela has been beside Teresa Spence all the way through her hunger strike, and has been right beside her, organizing, making sure things are in place for her. And it's wonderful to have you with us today in place of Teresa Spence, but we're glad you're here on your own, too, to represent what you represent. So welcome to Angela.
Well, I'm going to introduce myself traditionally. Ani napajish ginu wiguana kwe, andishni cause, wakwa dodem, Long Plain First Nation, Gindodom Jiba, Anishinaabe and Dao. Hello, my name is Angela Bercier. My spirit name is Little Eagle Feather Woman. I am Anishinaabe, I'm a Barrett Clan, and I'm also from Long Plain First Nation. I would like to say thank you and Chimigwech to our elder for welcoming us into your Blackfoot territory. Back in December, I was the lead organizer for the hunger strike undertaken by Ogichita-Kwe, Chief Teresa Spence. I have come here to extend greetings on behalf of Teresa, who has unfortunately couldn't make it here due to unforeseen circumstances in Ottawa-Piscat. Just as Teresa was about to make her way here to Calgary for this event, 10 people had went missing in her community. A search and rescue team located some of the community members, and one was found in critical condition. And most of you may already have heard that their school had suffered a flooding over these past couple of days. So considering the amount of crisis going on in Ottawa-Piscat, I am encouraging you all to keep them in your prayers tonight. And just before I came up to speak, I spoke briefly to Teresa Spence, and she had asked me to tell everyone that she is sorry that she cannot be here in person, and that she is grateful and humbled by the show of love and support throughout her 44-day hunger strike. and also that we must stand together in solidarity and unity to resist the abuses from the Conservative government. Hi, hi, Chimigwach.
Thank you, Angela. I know it's not easy for you to do that and to step in like you did, so thank you very much for being here and for enlightening us in the way that you did. Our next speaker is Michael Harris, who is a writer, journalist, documentary filmmaker, and one of those people who stirs the pot, you might say, or you could say it in even more colorful language, which I suspect he might use himself. So come on up here, Michael.
What are you supposed to say after that introduction? I want to start out by just mentioning that Eugene Rayaume has passed away in Penticton, BC. He was the first Métis member of Parliament since Louis Riel. You won't be hearing that in Mr. Harper's speech or anything else about First Nations people. What he did with Chief Teresa Spence during her hunger strike is something I will never personally forget. But the overwhelming memory for me of Stephen Harper is that he chose to be in Toronto to welcome panda bears to Canada at Pearson Airport when the kids of Hudson Bay walked through the heart of winter to come to Ottawa to show that they counted. That is unforgivable. You have heard tonight from the generals of the dissent in the country, great people like Maude Barlow, a hero of mine, and a great person like David Suzuki, who has been attacked for the high crime of rational dissent. And it would be funny, except in the research for my latest book, The Politics of Personal Destruction Used Against Anybody Who Opposes, has been something that has left me sleepless. I want to just start out briefly telling you two things. My work has always been soldiering, street by street, hand-to-hand combat, based on stories with a human face. Donald Marshall schooled me early on the reality of what it was like to be a Mi'kmaq Indian in Nova Scotia. When he contacted me and said that he did not commit the murder for which he had been in prison for 11 years and asked me to look into it, the people at my newspaper thought it was a waste of time. I went to Sydney, Nova Scotia, and within 2 days had found the killer, the real killer of Sandy Seal. So you can see how complicated the task was. I knocked on the door of the two eyewitnesses who put Junior Marshall in prison for 11 years, and the first thing out of Maynard Chant's mouth and Johnny Pratico's mouth was, "Thank God someone finally knocked on the door. I didn't see a thing. The police made me do it." And I'm not exaggerating. The whole thing was taken care of in 48 hours, including a confession from Roy Newman-Ebsary, the killer, who wrote a note for me to give Junior Marshall saying, "Listen, kid, I'm in your corner. The truth will set you free." And it did. Donald Marshall was released from prison after spending 11 years in jail from the time he was 17. He got out at the age of 29. I tell you this story because when it started, everyone said it was hopeless. There was no chance of reversing a second-degree murder conviction in which there were two eyewitnesses. And the Crown said, you might as well have had a video camera set up in Wentworth Park that night. But Marshall got his day in court at a high cost. The court exonerated him of the guilt by saying that the evidence no longer supported the conviction. They didn't say he was innocent. And then they gave him $276,000 for the 11 years he had spent in prison, because as an Indian, he would never have had a job and had no economic value. So we kept going on that case, and a second Royal Commission was called, and at the time I was publishing a newspaper. Chief Justice Alex Hickman of the Newfoundland Supreme Court was the commissioner, and he sent his Crown Counsel to my office with a question. And he said, Michael, how should this Royal Commission end? And I said, not by blackening Donald Marshall, that's for sure. They gave him $2.3 million, which was a better settlement. But guess what? They wouldn't give him access to the money because as a native, with no education, they thought he would waste the money. So it was parceled out to him in dribs and drabs. And 27 years later, on the day I attended his funeral in Sydney, a week before then, he called me and said, Michael, they still haven't given me access to the money. I've got a wife and kids, and I can't do a thing about it. And I tell you this for two reasons. Number one, the impossible can be done. Individual people can make a difference. And number two, it's a struggle. It's a battle. It's street to street, hand to hand combat with the system that never wants to admit it's wrong. The second small story I want to tell you is that the other human face on a big story for me happened when I got a call from a waiter who worked in a hotel in St. John's, Newfoundland. His name was Shane Earle, and he read a piece that I had written about justice. And he said, why wasn't there any justice for the boys of Mount Cashel? And I met him over a cup of tea and listened to his horrible, hideous account of child abuse, 91 boys at Mount Cashel Orphanage. And at the end of the discussion, I said to him, I will take up the story, but I always ask people before I get involved in a major investigation, what would you like to see? What for you is success? And he said, I would like to see the people who did this to us punished. I would like to see a royal commission into how this happens so it never again happens to kids under the care of other people. And lastly, I would like to see some of the people whose lives have been ruined compensated. And I looked at him and I said, I'll tell you, one of those three things would be a major accomplishment. But okay, I now understand what success is. Those boys shared a reward of $13.3 million when the book was written and the movie was done and the story got out. But it took 12 years of fighting the Irish Christian Brothers in the courts, hiding their assets, pretending they had no money to pay, and insisting they were the injured parties. And at the Royal Commission, I want to leave you with one thought about how some establishment figures behave when they're criticized. The Brother Superior of the Irish Christian Brothers, Roger McHugh, came from the Vatican for the Royal Commission. And the question was asked of him by David Day, who was the chief counsel for the commission. We noticed that you sent the 3 Irish Christian brothers who abused these children for care in Ontario. You gave them treatment. Did you ever give treatment to the boys, their victims? And Roger McHugh said, to my everlasting shame, I didn't think it harmed them. That was his testimony. As a result of writing Unholy Orders and making that story known, we got the residential schools issue opened up. It went around the world like a wave. The Irish Christian Brothers were outed in several countries, including, finally, Ireland. The reason I tell you these stories is that every story does have a human face. And the story I'm working on now has Stephen Harper's face on it. And I've been working on this story for 2.5 years, and I want to tell you that this is like preferring an indictment. Everything that I say in the book has to be provable. It means gathering a great deal of evidence. One of the people I talked to was a pollster who had a client who was anxious to suck up to the Prime Minister and asked the pollster, who's in his inner circle? Who can I influence? And the answer was, there is no inner circle, just a dot. And that's why Stephen Harper's face is on this book. I've talked to some of the people that Canadians trust the most about what's gone on with Stephen Harper. Sheila Fraser came over to my apartment. By the way, when the interview finished, she said, would you like to see my Auditor General stare? And I said, yeah, and she goes, it was amazing. But Sheila said this, and this is to the point I'm trying to make about Harper. We have effectively suffered a coup. Our parliament doesn't work anymore. It's not an exaggeration, but it's a detailed accusation to make and requires detailed evidence. In gathering the evidence, here's what Sheila Fraser told me. Parliament has become so undermined, it is unable to do the job that people expect of it. A glaring example is the budget bill, where there was no debate or scrutiny of the legislation. When you start thinking of what an omnibus bill is, an omnibus bill, omnibus bills have a place in our system. If you change a serious piece of legislation that affects 20 other pieces of legislation directly, it makes sense to bundle them together in the omnibus bill, and when the law changes, all of the affected legislation is also changed. But what Stephen Harper has done is bundle hundreds of pieces of legislation, scores of things that are unrelated, and put them in telephone book-sized bills that no one can possibly absorb, and on top of that, attaches them to a process that's supposed to be budget implementation, but has zero to do with budgets. It's just a way of bringing his particular revolution without debate and without any dissent. And Sheila Fraser pointed that out. Now, Peter Milliken. Peter Milliken is the longest serving Speaker of the House of Commons in our history, and in fact, in the British Commonwealth. He said to me, if you want to interview me, you have to come to my cottage. It's 100 miles away, and it's 7 miles up a river. And if you want to meet me, I'll meet you there. So I went. And Peter and I had a discussion, and he said this: Parliament can hardly be weakened any more than it already is. MPs are supposed to be free to speak on behalf of constituents and supposed to have diverse views. Harper refuses to let anyone do that. So you have a parliament in which the MPs aren't allowed to speak, and not just the opposition MPs. As Brent Rathgeber has shown us, everybody who disagrees with the PMO line is unacceptable to this man. He's turned that same zeal and lust to control on every single person around him. And that includes the people now that you're reading about in the press every day. By the way, the question of what to do with Rob Ford, his fishing buddy, came up at the convention where I was banned from coverage. And I had a suggestion: make him a senator, because at least his residency is beyond dispute. We know where he lives. Have little time, and you've listened to lots of speeches tonight, and we have the great David Suzuki to follow me, so I'm going to just... No. I want to point out one particular fact, a story that you all care about and you've read about, and that's the story of the detainees. The issue of what happened. We will not know because Stephen Harper has suppressed the evidence. But remember, when the panel was set up, it was supposed to be a panel, a nonpartisan panel of MPs who would get a look at the documents, 40,000 of them. And then those documents would be released to the public. And those where there was a question would go to 3 Supreme Court judges, and they would look at them with national security in mind to determine if they could be released. But with Stephen Harper, it's like the salami image. You have to watch every slice. What happened with that panel? I would wager that not many people in this audience would remember exactly what was promised, but what he did, not what he said. In the end, they released one tranche of documents, 4,000 documents out of 40,000. And then they said they had spent $14 million, and that was enough, and it was over. Now, something to remember. You will recall that Stephen Harper was found in contempt of Parliament because he wouldn't release information asked for by a parliamentary committee. That was the grounds of the contempt finding. And so, at the end of the day, we have Peter Milliken telling me in the interview the contempt is still there. This was not done by a committee of Parliament setting up the panel. This was done by an order of the House. And therefore, when the government fell and we had the election, it was still in force. So the contempt is still in force. I'm going to give you one last thing before I'm hooked off the stage. I think when you do this kind of work, you have to leave a little bit of your heart in everything that you do and say. And I want to leave you some words that mean a great deal to me. These were written by Robert Frost. Some say the world will end in fire. Others say in ice. From what I've learned of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. And I say for Canada, neither fire nor ice, greed or hate, love and justice is where we should be going.
Thank you very much, Michael. What a lot. We can't wait for your book to come out now. When will it be ready?
It has to be in January 1st, but Stephen Harper is making it very easy for me.
Yeah, he is, I guess, right now. Yeah, he is doing it for you. That's great. Well, what better way to end our evening together than to hear from one of Canada's greatest people of any generation and of any century, David Suzuki.
Wow. Oh. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I was going to conk out. I'm afraid I've come down with a cold for my grandson, and I don't have much voice left. But I'm absolutely delighted and honored to have this opportunity to share a few ideas with you. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that this is the traditional territory of First Nations people. And I want to say that I'm here today to speak as an individual, not on behalf of any organization or any group. I speak to you today as an elder. And you know, elders are freed from the drive for more power or money or fame. Any elder who's still pushing for that needs help. So I have no hidden agenda, I have no vested interest, but to speak the truth from my heart. Now, I tell people I'm in the death zone, and I say that not to be morbid, but it's a reality. I'm in the last part of my life, and it turns out this is the most important time in my life because I feel a heavy weight of responsibility in this time. You see, elders have something no other group in society has. We've lived an entire life. We've made mistakes. We've suffered failures. We've celebrated a few successes. We've learned a lot in that lifetime. And those have been hard-won lessons. And now at this time in the death zone, we've got to drift or sift through those hard-won experiences, looking for the nuggets that are worth passing on. And for those of us that are past a time of commitment or vested interest, we're now free to share them without fear of being punished in some way. And the group that we've got to talk to are, of course, the young people, for whom what is or is not done in the coming years will reverberate through their entire lives. Their whole future is at stake for what's going on now. And the beauty of young people is they don't have the vested interest in any one way of doing things. They haven't bought into the system yet. They're free to listen to the nuggets of wisdom that they get from their elders. So I say to elders, get the hell off the golf course or off the couch. Get on with the most important part of your life. Where's Jim's dad? A man I have tremendous respect for. Where are the retired CEOs of the oil industry, from the forest sector, from all of those sectors, that you can now speak the truth. You've played the game, but you're not in the game anymore. And now let's get together with young people and get on with things. I wrote a very, very serious, very long speech. I'm sorry, this kind of an audience is not the kind of audience that wants to hear this speech. So I've kind of been batting my head trying to figure out what the hell can I say in the last few minutes. Let me just say one thing I had no intention of saying. I spent 8 years living in the United States from 1954 to 1962, getting an education it wasn't possible to get in Canada at that time. And when I was beginning my senior year in college, the last year, in 1954, on October 4th, the Soviet Union electrified the world by announcing they had launched Sputnik. And I see there are a lot of people here that remember that time. It was an amazing thing. And every hour and a half, you could hear the beep beep of that satellite reminding us of the Soviet Union's power. And in the months that followed that time, the American armed services, and all three of the armed services had their own rockets. They tried to match the Russian success, and every one of them blew up on the launch pad. And meanwhile, the Russians launched the first animal in space, a dog, Laika, the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, the first team of cosmonauts, the first woman, Valentina Tereshkova. This is a very frightening time because the Soviet Union seemed so powerful. They were taking over huge parts of Africa, Southeast Asia, South America. The Cold War was in full play. America didn't roll over and say, well, hell, we can't catch up to them. It'll destroy the economy. They just grabbed the moment and they said, we've got to win this. We've got to beat these guys. And wow, what a great time to be a science student. I mean, here I was, a foreigner in the States, and all you had to do was say, I like science. They threw money at you. It was wonderful. There were jobs all over the place. And I didn't even apply for a job. I got 3 wonderful job offers after I graduated with my PhD. But in 1962, I chose to leave the United States and come home to Canada because Canada was different, not better, but Canada was different and for me, preferable. For me, Canada meant Tommy Douglas in the CCF, now the NDP. Canada meant ultimately Medicare and equalization payments between the provinces. Canada meant Quebec and the NFB and the CBC. And I've never regretted coming back. But I can tell you the last few years, and I'm in the death zone now, it grieves me to see that many of the things that made Canada so different and special for me are being eroded, and you've heard them in great detail tonight. It's a very, very sad thing. So we have to really seize the moment and take the challenge. I hope that Common Causes is going to be an umbrella organization for something that is now going to be carried across the country, because this is what we need. We are already in the majority. It's just we've got a screwed up system. And we better also work on the parties, 2 parties that are going to split that vote and give this guy a chance of getting in again. You know, my mom and dad were born and raised in Canada. They couldn't vote until 1946 because they were Japanese Canadians. So I've always taken the right to vote very, very seriously. And I've voted in every federal election. I have never voted for a government that got into power. Because we've got such a fucked up system of no minority representation. So there are a lot of challenges that face us, but I want to end my story by saying that the American response to Sputnik was absolutely amazing. They just poured money into universities. They set up NASA, they set up the NSF, they set up all these big agencies, and they committed themselves to catching up to the Russians. And when, in 1961, JFK said, we're going to beat them to the moon, nobody complained about how much this was going to cost or the damage to the economy. And you think about the consequences. When they committed to getting to the moon, they didn't know how the hell they were going to do it. They just made the commitment. But not only are they the only country to land human beings on the moon, but you think of all of the unexpected benefits that spun out of that. 24-hour-a-day newscasts. Well, maybe that's not a great thing, but cell phones and GPS, and nobody anticipated these other things. And just this year, when the Nobel Prizes were announced in physics and chemistry, who gets them? Of course, most of them were Americans. Why? Because 50 years ago, America grabbed onto the challenge and said, we've got to throw everything at winning this war. We've got to seize the moment when it comes to climate change. When we look at the ecological devastation that's going on, this is a huge opportunity. But we just have to see and say, this is what we've got to do. And then all of the benefits will unexpectedly fall out of it. Anyway, the challenge is with us. Thank you very much.
Now, if you want to continue this fabulous spirit and the movement and the inspiration, I invite you to the rally tomorrow at 11:30. Crash the party.
If they want breakfast, come to the Old Bar early.
At 14th Avenue and McLeod Trail at 11:30 tomorrow. So we hope to see you all there and to continue the work wherever you are in your communities around this country. Continue to the work that people have inspired us to do. We can and we will have a different country than we've got now, and we will change direction without question.
Hey.
So obviously, I want to thank all of the people who put this thing together tonight. There's a lot of organizers for these events behind the scenes who do an awful lot of work. I'm not going to start naming people like Julie or anything like that. But there have been people for a long time who have been putting this thing together, so we thank them. And particularly, we thank our speakers for coming from throughout the country. Some have to leave right away and go home to be with families and other work. So we thank you so much for coming to Calgary, the belly of the beast. But we were the people who love this country so much, who are willing to come here and to engage in this and to continue the work together wherever we are in this land. Thank you, everybody.
We got to go for hugs. You bet. Thank you so much.
What a wonderful daughter you have. What a wonderful family.
I didn't realize you were so funny. You were terrific. No, you really.
Well, the whole thing was. It was like one after another, after another, after another. That was very shame. Very impressive.
Not a traveling
Well done, Scott, on the logistics. 3 hours later.
Yeah.
Thank you for all you did.
Great job. That was a great presentation. That was awesome.
Well, it was all.
This is great. So safe travels back to
Thank you, sir. Safe travels to Yellowknife.
Yeah, we're both sort of flying off around the same time.
Yeah.
No, you're flying off.